Roughly 3 years ago, Hyundai really shocked the industry when they green-lit the production of the brand's first ever pickup truck, the all-new Santa Cruz, back in 2022. Now, unlike conventional rivals, the Santa Cruz was different because this was a unibody truck with an all-independent suspension, and it shared its basic platform with the just recently redesigned Hyundai Tucson. Now, of course, competing along the lights of the Ford Maverick and the slightly larger Honda Ridgeline, with new rivals coming out, it's time for Hyundai to give the Santa Cruz its first round of updates, and as you can see, they're pretty similar to what we've also seen in the Tucson. It gets an updated front fascia with new wheel designs, a slightly tweaked rear end, and on the interior, we have a brand new infotainment system with a larger 12.3-inch display and their latest software. So as you can see, this week, Hyundai has loaned us the most off-road ready version of the Santa Cruz. This is a 2025 XRT trim, and the big question I want to answer, for those of you who need the capabilities of a pickup truck, but you also don't want to deal with the usual cumbersome annoyances of a typical body-on-frame vehicle, has the latest version of the Santa Cruz XRT stack up? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior styling updates that Hyundai has made for 2025, I thought I'd pop the hood and remind you guys what's powering this thing now. Hyundai actually didn't make any powertrain changes to the Santa Cruz for 2025, which is kind of where I do think that Hyundai should consider offering an electrified option. But regardless, what you're looking at is the more powerful engine option, which is a 2.5-liter turbocharged four-cylinder. Now, this engine is not available in the current generation Tucson, but you can get it in the Santa Fe, not to be confused, of course, with the Santa Cruz. This is the 2.5-liter gasoline direct injection turbocharged four-cylinder, part of their Smart Stream engine family. And the power figures are unchanged here, making 281 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. That's roughly almost 50 more horsepower versus the upgraded 2-liter turbo that you find in the Ford Maverick, but it does have less power, of course, than the V6 that you find in the Honda Ridgeline. It all goes out through an 8-speed wet dual clutch automatic transmission, so it's not technically a torque converter automatic, it's a wet dual clutch system. And with this powertrain, you get the company's standard H-Track all-wheel drive system, which gives you the ability to basically lock the front and rear axles in a 50-50 torque split if you guys are ever stuck in sand or snow, for example. Now, if you guys want a cheaper option, there is a base engine that essentially is this motor without the turbo. That delivers around 90 less horsepower. I probably would skip it, but it does come equipped with a conventional 8-speed automatic with your choice of either front or all-wheel drive. This powertrain comes standard with all-wheel drive, and this is the cheapest way that you can get into this powertrain because it's standard on the XRT and the limited trims. Fuel economy is rated at 18 in the city, 26 on the highway. It's one less versus the limited, which is rated at 19.27. That's because of the tires, I believe. Fuel tank capacity is just shy of 18 gallons. You're looking at around 350-ish miles of range on a full tank. Now, Hyundai doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. The last one that I tested two years ago did it in 6.2 seconds. We'll see what we can get when we get this vehicle out on the road. It should have a top speed of around 120-ish miles an hour. Towing capacity maxes out at 5,000 pounds, 3,500 pounds if you guys go for the base engine with front-wheel drive, although the base engine with all-wheel drive can tow up to 5,000. I probably wouldn't do so, however. Payload capacity is just over 1,400 pounds, and as this truck sits, it weighs in at just under 4,300 pounds, so it's no lightweight, but it's also not the heaviest vehicle in its class. But let's go ahead and close up this hood here and talk about the exterior styling. Now, as you guys can see, the look of this vehicle is very similar to the Tucson when it first came out, but for 2025, you can see the look has been refined. It's, Hyundai's trying to make it look a little bit more rugged, a little bit more masculine, a little bit more brawny, especially on the XRT trim. You can see the white exterior of my particular test truck looks pretty good with the black accents that you get with the big Hyundai grille with the blacked out Hyundai logo. You can see the daytime running lights are kind of cleverly integrated into the actual grille where it almost matches and kind of lines up with the actual grille inserts with those functional openings. The headlights are divorced from the daytime running lights, although the turn signals are LEDs. You can see all trims come with full LED headlights with LED low and high beams, which are mounted down low. No fog lights in the vehicle, but the XRT, you can tell it's the XRT from its unique front fascia, those red or those orange painted tow hooks, which are functional. And then you can see this lower part of the front bumper tries to make it look almost like a front skid plate, which by the way, this trim does not come, I believe, with skid plates, although I feel like you could probably add it from the dealer as an accessory. No additional ground clearance on this trim, but Hyundai says this model has roughly 8.6 inches of ground clearance, which is a pretty usable amount. Now moving over to the side profile, you can see the Tucson, or I'm sorry, the Santa Cruz, I might do that throughout the video, is bigger than the Tucson by about 9 inches. At an overall length of 195 inches long with a 118-inch long wheelbase, this is among the shortest car trucks that you're going to find. It's roughly 5 inches shorter than a Maverick, roughly a foot shorter versus something like the Honda Ridgeline. So again, this compares or competes in a class below something like the Ridgeline. You can see with the XRT, you get more cladding along the vehicle. That's to give it that more rugged look with the kind of texture and kind of like the little Easter egg there on the actual cladding. The wheels, these were wrench inspired. That's what Hyundai says. It's a newly designed 18-inch wheel riding on a 245 by 60 R18 Continental Terrain Contact, kind of an all-terrain tire, although it's not kind of like a rugged all-terrain that you'd find on most traditional trucks. You have an all-independent suspension, no adaptive dampers, and you can see the cladding kind of continues along the side. The XRT also includes flat black for the side mirrors. They're not power folding, but you do have a 360 camera, which I wasn't expecting, along with the parking sensors, integrated turn signals. I don't love how this is black painted along with that. Not a single ounce of chrome along the side. And then if you guys are looking for a sunroof, the XRT does not offer it. You have to step down to an SEL Activity or the limited trim, nice low profile roof rail along the roof of the vehicle. And then following or pulling back here, you can see the really unconventional looks of this truck. I mean, you can tell it's a unibody because of the fact that the bed to the cab doesn't actually have that clear separation, because again, it is one continuous structure as opposed to a body on frame. And then looking at the rear, you can see the taillights haven't really changed too much. Hyundai still doesn't do an LED taillight design. You can see it looks LED, but the turn signal, the brake lights, the taillight assembly is all incandescent. There's a big bold XRT badge here to let you know you have the more rugged model, and you can see H-Track 2.5T and then Santa Cruz is kind of stamped into the tailgate. You can also see there's Hyundai badges into the actual handle of the tailgate. And then if I push that, you can see the tailgate itself is damped, which is nice. Although unlike the Ridgeline, this does not open up in a side swing manner to give you easier access to the bed. The bed measures around 4.5 feet, just shy of 4.5 feet actually. It's around 52 inches, but it is a very usable bed. It's a composite bed, as you can see. You have your usual tie downs, and then you have like a little bit of storage here, which is nice. There's some LED lighting, although I don't see any power outlets back here. And then just like the Ridgeline, you also get a nice little underfloor storage here, or underbed storage area, although it's not quite as deep as what you get in the Honda. One thing I really like about the Santa Cruz is this like pull-out tonneau cover, which is included if you guys go for the higher trims and up, which is definitely nice for securing your stuff. And like I said earlier, this bed will carry a maximum of 1,411 pounds, which is pretty good considering the size of the actual Santa Cruz. Now on the outside, Hyundai made some pretty small tweaks to the exterior styling, but on the inside, this is where Hyundai did make some more noticeable changes, specifically if you guys were disappointed in the interior ergonomics and technology of the old version. Now before we get inside, you can see this is the newer Hyundai key fob that they just introduced on their EVs. You can see the fob itself looks really weird. It's like an egg shape until you realize when you turn it on inside, it's actually the Hyundai logo, which is kind of clever. You can see it has your usual buttons here for lock, unlock, remote start, and a panic function. You can also pop open the tailgate from here, although it's not a power operated tailgate. Overall, the fob is definitely weird, but it certainly is different. Now, as you approach the vehicle, you can see those black painted door handles on this trim definitely look cheap to me. If I touch that little area there that locks the door, you can see no power folding mirrors on this truck. Touch the back of the door handle, that unlocks the door for you. This vehicle does not have an auto walkaway lock or unlock feature like some competitors. Now, looking at the interior, I hope you guys like a dark black interior, because the XRT only comes with this H-Tex leatherette material. So it's a fake leather. And I also wish that it had more color. Like for example, this would have been nice if that was orange, or there was some contrast orange stitch, or how about like a light gray interior? You can get that on the limited trim, I believe, which also comes with real leather if I remember correctly, but this black interior is just too dark for me. So personally, I would probably skip this trim to get a different color interior. You can see the door panel has a soft touch injection molded plastic. You have some soft touch here with some faux stitching, some fabric material here, which is pretty similar to the new Tucson that I just tested. Nice and leather padded over here. Lots of piano black on this area, which I don't love. It shows dust and fingerprints very easily. And then the two front windows are one touch up, down. The rears, however, are not one touch down or up. So I found that to be an annoyance that it was lacking. Down here on this lower portion, you can see it's hard touch plastic, just a standard Hyundai stereo system. The Limited will come with the upgraded system if you guys are an audiophile. Now these seats, they do adjust in 10 different ways for the driver. They are 3-level heated. If you guys want ventilated seats, you need to go to the Limited trim. This trim only comes with heated seats, but once you get inside the truck, you can see it has a nice easy step-in height because of that 8.5 inches of ground clearance as I shut the door. The door also has a pretty solid sounding thunk, which adds to the impression of quality. Now, starting the vehicle up, you can see start-stop button is right here where you'd expect it to be. It has their latest infotainment system with a standard 12.3-inch center display, which includes their latest software. As you can see, my phone is connected via the wireless CarPlay, which is definitely nice. You also have on the SEL activity trims and up, the all-digital 12.3-inch cluster. If you guys step down to an SE or SEL, you'll have a 4.2-inch cluster with analog dials. So kind of keep that in mind. But this definitely is an improvement with the twin 12.3-inch displays, which is nice. You also have a soft touch injection molded plastic up here. I like this little shelf, which was also introduced on the Tucson. They repositioned the vents as well to where they're lower because they wanted to put the screen a little bit higher here. You also have this kind of touch sensitive panel for your climate. You can see 3-level heated seats. There is an empty portion here for a heated steering wheel or ventilated seats, which you'll get on the Limited trim. I love the fact that Hyundai did add back knobs and buttons. So you can see buttons here, knobs for volume and tuning, knobs for your dual zone climate, which is nice. The steering wheel, as you can see, is their new steering wheel with a three-spoke design with the new H logo there in Morse code with the 4 little dots. You have a paddles to control the 8-speed auto, and then you can see the steering wheel itself has a manual tilt telescoping, a lot of range of adjustability so you can get a pretty good, comfortable driving position, which is nice. The horn, it sounds a little bit puny considering this is a truck, but that's something that I guess I could probably get over. And then over here to the side, you can see there's a lot of buttons here for your dimmer control. That's to turn on the bed light. There's a new tow mode here with the transmission. That's for those of you who actually do plan to utilize the 5,000-pound towing. I won't be able to test that today, but Hyundai claims that it allows the transmission shift logic to be tailored, and it allows it to be more, I guess, capable when you're actually towing heavy loads. Now down over here in the center area, you can see wireless phone charging pad is here. My iPhone 16 Pro Max would fit nicely. A little bit more storage. You have 2 USB-C charging ports, which is nice. If I put the truck into reverse, there's your full top-down 360 camera, which includes trajectory, parking sensors, rear automatic braking, which is nice. You can also click on that and do a full 360 perimeter scan, which definitely looks good. This is unexpectedly good in terms of technology. So Hyundai's really been improving their software, specifically by adding the wireless CarPlay, which I love. Down here you can see very traditional shifter for the 8-speed auto. There is a manual mode here, or you guys can use the paddles, and then you can see a few more buttons here for the auto hold, the lock system for the all-wheel drive, which basically locks it in a 50-50 torque split. There's downhill assist control. You can push that. It'll also pull up your 360 camera, and then there's a electronic parking brake. More piano black plastic here, which shows fingerprints and scratches, so I don't love that, but you can see a nice padded center console. Open that up, you can see it's pretty relatively good size with additional storage bin floating above it. The seats aren't really tailored for aggressive driving, but they're relatively nicely padded, and it feels like a vinyl material as opposed to a leather material. The heat function works well. Open that up, you can see the glove box is damped but not lined with felt. It's actually pretty big. A lot of my camera equipment fits in there quite nicely, which is great for kind of providing more hidden storage. The XRT doesn't have a digital camera or an auto dimming rearview mirror. You do have LED map lighting, and you can see just a woven material for the headliner. If you want a sunroof, step it up to the Limited or step down to the SEL activity trim. But overall, this interior, very similar to the new Tucson. Good fit and finish, really improved tech, good visibility as well with comfortable seats. I just don't like the fact that Hyundai only offers the XRT with a black interior with no contrast, so it's just a little bit too dark for my taste. But again, that can be easily fixed by going with a different trim level. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area and show you guys what that space is like. Now, all Santa Cruzes come with 4 full-size doors, so a crew cat configuration, and you can see it is all hard touch plastic back here, which I don't love, but it's nice and padded over here where you'd rest your elbow. Cup holder built into the door. You can see the bench seat here could theoretically sit 3 people across, or you can also fold this up. You can see there's some underfloor storage over there, which is a nice touch. And then once you get back here, Hyundai says you have around 36.5 inches of legroom, which is a good like 4 inches less than what you get in the Tucson, which I find to be really interesting considering this has a longer wheelbase. But you can see that's where I have the seat to drive. There's still a pretty decent amount of space, good foot space, not a flat floor back here, but you do have rear seat air vents, 2 more USB-C charging ports, and then there's also an armrest that folds down and gives you 2 cup holders. This rear door does slide open, but it is just a manual control. In terms of the headroom space, you can see a solid 3 to 4 inches of headroom clearance, so pretty good headroom. That sunroof not being here definitely helps with that, but overall the backseat area is certainly, you know, better than most mid-sized trucks, actual trucks, but it is, again, not quite as good as what you're going to find in the Tucson if you are cross-shopping the two vehicles. So it's been about 2 years since I had a chance to do a full review on a Hyundai Santa Cruz for you. Remember, when this car truck came out in 2022, it was technically the first truck that Hyundai has ever offered here in North America, and it very much kind of reminded me of like a spiritual successor to something like the Subaru Brat or the Subaru Baja. This is a unibody vehicle that competes with something like the Ford Maverick, although it's not quite as big or as expensive as the current generation Honda Ridgeline. Now, the one that we're driving here is the most off-road oriented version, which is appropriate given that the Santa Cruz is a pickup truck. And what that means when you go for this trim, you also get the company's 2.5 liter turbocharged direct injection 4-cylinder that's hooked up to an 8-speed wet dual clutch automatic transmission. Now, this transmission has gotten some flack over the years. It's only been out for a couple of years, but some would argue that it's not the best transmission for towing and hauling duties, and I have to agree with some people, considering the fact that, you know, most people don't really prefer a dual clutch for something in a pickup truck. But let's go ahead and test out the 0 to 60 time. The last time I tested one, I got 6.2 seconds, so we have the truck in sport mode right now. Let's brake torque it. Oof. Feels good off the line there. 0 to 60 in 6.37 seconds. So that's pretty darn close to what I got in this thing about 2 years ago, which had the same powertrain. I will say that this XRT probably is going to be a little slower than the Limited that I tested a couple years ago, and that's because these bigger all-terrain tires are adding more rolling resistance. This truck is also pretty much around the same weight as the Limited, which still 6.37 seconds is a respectable time. And I imagine that should easily be able to keep pace with the Ford Maverick, the refreshed one with the 2-liter turbo, although I haven't had a chance to drive the updated Maverick. Technically, Ford has dropped the power a little bit. This is still one of the more powerful engine options in the class, which is definitely nice. It makes the Santa Cruz's acceleration certainly more like sprightly, which I really appreciate, especially if you guys are going to be towing and hauling things. Let's try another run here without brake torquing it. You can feel when the turbo kicks in, there's a noticeable shove. 6.74 seconds there, so a little bit slower because we are going more uphill there. It's still a pretty good time. Those of you who don't go for an XRT or Limited trim, you're going to be saddled with the non-turbocharged version of this engine, which only offers 180 or 191 horsepower. I personally would skip that engine, especially if you guys need to actually tow and haul heavy loads, because I find it to probably have not enough power in this vehicle. I mean, I find it to be underpowered in the Tucson, which is a lighter and smaller vehicle. It's going to be even worse in this truck, although the 2.5 base engine does have a conventional 8-speed auto, which in theory should be more reliable and more durable than this powertrain. But regardless, in sport mode here, this truck doesn't have adaptive dampers or anything. It just feels a little bit like the steering gets a little bit heavier. The transmission's a little more eager to upshift or get out of its top gears. I'm going to switch the drive mode here into its smart mode, which is kind of like the adaptive mode. There's also a normal or a snow mode. Most of you will probably either drive it in normal or smart. And the Santa Cruz is really easy to drive. Remember, this is an all-independent suspension. It's a unibody truck. So it's really just, it drives like a Tucson, essentially, just a Tucson that's around 9 inches longer, 8 to 9 inches longer, although it still feels really good. I have this really nice commanding view of the road, which is nice. I can see out of the front and the sides pretty good. The view out of the back is good, although I wish Hyundai offered a digital camera review mirror on this particular trim. Remember, you can go step it up to the Limited. It'll give you like a full 360 camera. It'll give you a sunroof. It'll give you heated and ventilated seats. The XRT is one notch below the Limited, but I wouldn't be angry if Hyundai would offer more upscale touches on the XRT. They should really just make this like an off-road package as opposed to making it its own standalone trim. I think that people, who want the luxury features of the Limited wouldn't mind the look and the extra capability of the XRT. But putting my foot down, this vehicle does have their latest H-Track all-wheel drive system, which has a mechanical connection between the front and rear axles. You can also lock the torque split 50-50 if you'd like, if you're stuck. And I do find that the power delivery is good. There's not really any wheel slippage. The engine has a pretty pleasing sound to it. I actually don't mind the way the engine is. It's much more refined versus Hyundai's 1.6 liter turbo 4. This 2.5 is much better. And the 8-speed in this model here, it is a little bit sluggish at times. You can get a sense that it's a dual clutch, that it's not a traditional torque converter automatic, but once it gets going, it shifts quicker than a torque converter automatic. And as you guys saw, it delivers, really nice performance with its, below 6.5 second 0 to 60 time. I will say, however, in day-to-day driving, when you're not like putting your foot down hard, most of the times it feels good until you really need to get it going there. Like when you're kind of doing partial throttle going to like mid or 3/4 throttle, there is a noticeable delay, noticeable hesitation. I don't know if it's mostly the engine with its turbo lag or if it's the transmission trying to put the power down and select which ratio it is, but there is a noticeable delay that you have to get used to. And I do find it infuriating because I complained about that same delay in the Hyundai Santa Fe, which technically rides on a similar architecture with the same powertrain with less power. But here in the Santa Cruz, I am noticing the transmission is less annoying, but it's still a little bit annoying at times. So I really wish that Hyundai would just put a conventional 8-speed auto, something that they use like in the their Genesis vehicles with their twin turbo V6 powertrains. But overall, going down the road here, the Santa Cruz is pretty refined. It has a good ride quality, comfortable ride quality actually. Not much in terms of engine noise or road noise or wind noise. Surprisingly, the road noise is good because, I was worried about these all-terrain tires being a little noisy. Wind noise isn't too bad. It cruises along very nicely on the highway. These seats are the leatherette seats, which are pretty comfortable. Not much in terms of lateral support, but they're good for longer drives, although I wish the padding could be a little bit softer. Hyundais and Kias sometimes can have a little bit hard seats. That's something that I'm hoping that they'll address in the future. Driver assistance tech, this model does have adaptive cruise control with lane keep assist. It does have a version of their highway driving assist 2.0, which also has that camera that watches your face to make sure that you're alert and paying attention to the drive. But overall, it certainly is, an easy truck to drive. And that's the beauty about going with these car-based trucks. This and the Maverick are going to drive more like SUVs/cars, as opposed to having that body on frame with the live axle, which has more shutters. It has more of an imprecise ride control system, which I really appreciate how these drives. It just doesn't kind of tow and haul heavy loads. It doesn't feel quite as durable as an actual mid-size truck, so kind of keep that in mind. In terms of fuel efficiency, this truck is rated at 18 in the city, 26 on the highway. It's one less versus the Limited because of the all-terrain tires and the different front fascia. I guess it's less aerodynamic. In my week's worth of testing, I averaged around 17 mpg in mostly city driving. On the highway, I got about 25, so it's not too bad. Decent fuel efficiency. On a full tank of fuel, the trip computer was saying around just shy of 400 miles. I did around 350 miles in my actual testing, so not bad. Again, this is where the Ford Maverick, more specifically its hybrid powertrain, which you can now finally get with all-wheel drive, is going to get significantly better gas mileage. So, Hyundai could offer the Tucson Hybrid's powertrain in this vehicle. I just don't know how it would do in a pickup truck application. I just had one in the Tucson Hybrid for a week, and I actually didn't mind it. Hyundai's made some improvements, but Ford's system uses an eCVT and it's just inherently more efficient. So that's one of the reasons why the Maverick easily outsells the Santa Cruz 3-1 actually, and it's also a slightly less expensive vehicle. But overall, the changes that Hyundai has made have essentially kept this truck still very appealing, although I think there's still going to be plenty of reasons to check out the competitors, more specifically the electrified hybrid Maverick, which now offers all-wheel drive. And then if you guys can spend a little bit more money, you can basically go up to a mid-size truck, which is an actual truck. But if you want something that's weird, that's different, that is easy to drive, that's also surprisingly quick, the new 2025 Santa Cruz might definitely still be worth a look. Now, although the Hyundai Santa Cruz is Hyundai's first take into the pickup truck space, this vehicle has done relatively decent for them ever since it first came out. Their first year of sales were low, but their second year was around 36,000 units. They did basically the same amount of vehicles in 2023, and with the updates that Hyundai has made for 2025, I expect them to basically hold that steady at that number. Obviously, that sales figure is disappointing when you compare it to something like the Ford Maverick and the Honda Ridgeline. The Maverick roughly outsells this truck by about 3-1, and I suspect suspect it has to do with the fact that the Santa Cruz is more expensive. It comes with that dual clutch transmission, which is kind of like an interesting choice for people who actually do truck things, and you can't get this vehicle with an electrified hybrid option, which I guess does hurt the Santa Cruz's appeal compared to some of its rivals. Now, as you guys saw, the 2.5 liter turbo engine is a relatively quick powertrain. 0 to 60 happened in around 6.3 seconds. The driving dynamics of this vehicle are very car-like. If you guys have driven a Tucson, this will drive very similarly, which is kind of a good thing. It's going to feel very familiar. The interior also gets a big tech upgrade, and I find it to be a huge improvement compared to the old system, especially with the wireless Apple CarPlay, the standard 12.3-inch displays. Most trims will have the all-digital instrument cluster as well. The look of this car, it's not my cup of tea, but I do appreciate how weird this thing is. It definitely still continues to stand out, and I also love the fact that you get all that utility with the pickup truck bed. I mean, yes, it's not really a long bed at just over 4 feet, but I love the fact that it has the underfloor storage. I love how it's a composite bed. I love this very sturdy cover that comes with it. It's definitely a more lifestyle truck versus the Maverick, which tends to be more of an actual truck that you can do actual truck things, even though it's built off of a car-based architecture as well. Now, the back seat is definitely a little bit on the smaller side, but it is actually bigger than most mid-size trucks. And while, I do wish that Hyundai would do something about the dual clutch transmission, it is good in terms of spirited driving. I just don't know if I trust it in terms of long-term longevity, especially if you plan to actually tow and utilize that 5,000-pound towing capacity. Now, if you guys are looking to put your hands on a Santa Cruz, these are already at dealer lots today, and base pricing for this model has crept up over the years. The base SE starts at $28,500, which is still relatively affordable, but it is going to be a couple grand more expensive than a Ford Maverick. Although I haven't had a chance to drive the 2025 Maverick, Ford is going to be releasing full pricing on that very soon. You can't build it yet on their consumer site as of this filming. Going up to the SEL trim will cost you another couple thousand. SEL Activity is going to cost you in the mid $30,000 range, which I actually think is the sweet spot, but I think that Hyundai paired the SEL Activity with the wrong engine. The base 2.5 I feel is just going to be too underpowered for a vehicle like this. Going to the XRT trim is going to be the cheapest way to get the turbo engine, and you also get the off-road capability with the all-terrain tires, the more rugged look, a few other additional features starting at just over 40 grand. With Destination, my particular test car here, comes to just under $42,000. Now, if you guys want all the bells and whistles, you'll have to step up to the limited grade for another 2,000 bucks, which pushes us closer to 44 grand, which is relatively expensive. You can get into a base Honda Ridgeline for 40 grand. A Ford Maverick, the 2025, starts at around 27,000, but can easily climb 40 grand if you guys go for the fully loaded versions, especially with the FX4 off-road package. There's also that new performance-oriented Maverick Lobo trim. But overall, I think that the Santa Cruz definitely still has some appeal to it, especially if you guys are looking for a weird, quirky lifestyle truck and you don't necessarily need to do trucky things. You don't necessarily need to tow or haul heavy loads or really go that far off-road. It definitely is still an enticing proposition, especially if you guys, need the pickup truck utility, but you don't actually want to deal with the pickup truck bulk. With all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2025 Hyundai Santa Cruz and the off-road oriented XRT trim. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.